All right, Mr. Frankie Duarte, thank you very much for coming on to theboxingbar.com and welcome, sir.
It's great being here.
Frankie, first question. How did this crazy sport of boxing come into your life?
Well, growing up, watching my dad watch the fights, the Gillette cavalcade of boxing back in the early 60s, I wasn't really interested in watching it at that time, but, as a kid, you pass by and see my dad bobbing and weaving in front of the TV, and it looked a little peculiar to me, but, we just went on and played. It wasn't until I was about 10 years old, or 10 or 11, where I started finally sitting down and kind of looking at it over. Then I started watching fights from the Olympic Auditorium with my dad, and it would be me and my brother Robert. He's my older brother. And I think the fighters who were fighting at the time were fighters like Scrap Iron Johnson, Amos Big Train Lincoln, Joey Orbeal, Jerry Quarry. That's, the first ones that I was paying attention to. Then came Mondo Ramos, and then Ruben Navarro, Frankie Crawford, Jimmy Roberts, fighters like that. But it was around that time, I think it was about 11 or 12, that we got my first set of boxing gloves and did a lot of backyard boxing, kids in the neighborhood. Most of the kids wanted to play baseball and football. And I'd come over with my boxing gloves that I'd bought a pair of Hutch boxing gloves, which was a popular brand back in those days. And I'd want the kids to box, and they were bigger than me. I was always a little smaller. I did okay, but, some of them kind of clobbered me a little bit. But I was the next day with my boxing gloves. I wanted to box more, and not again. And, it wasn't until 1967 when I started going to junior high school. I was 13 years old. I started getting into a lot of trouble, and that time, the first, was glue sniffing, and then came the downers, the barbiturate. I was going through that phase. It was the late 70s, the time of the hippies, and drugs, and I got caught up in that.
Where did you grow up from?
Actually, I lived in Mar Vista, but I live right on the outskirts of Venice. And Mar Vista is not really a neighborhood. It's not a barrio or a ghetto, but and Venice was. So when I started going to junior high school, and I almost got fight with a few of the tough guys from Venice. One of them came up to me at one point. Hey, where you from? I said, I live over here. We from Venice. Venice is bad. I said, it's okay from there on. I'm from Venice. And I never actually lived in Venice. I ran with Venice for all those years. This was years ago before. Venice isn't the same as it was years ago. The rich people are buying it out for the last 20 years or so. So that's what got me into boxing. My parents were worried, and my dad made me promise that he'd stop, messing up if I'd find him a boxing gym. I remember before that, though, the first gym I went to was the Hoover Street Gym, just to visit, and wow, what an experience that was. I mean, Amos Big Train Lincoln, I had seen him fighting on TV at the Olympic. I was seeing he was sitting in the parking lot ready to get in his car. My dad pointed him out and he was like, yeah, that's him. Then we went inside, and there was Joey Orbeal was hitting the heavy bag, and I was watching him, and his boxing glove came untied, and he asked me to tie his boxing glove. Wow, what a thrill. Joey Orbeal was my favorite fighter at the time, and I was bragging the next day at school about being able to tie, that Joey Orbeal asked me to tie his boxing glove.
So what was your childhood like growing up there at home, with your siblings or your parents? I mean, did you guys have a good relationship with each other? Was it a dysfunctional family? How did that go?
Today we have a real good family. We're all close, and but it was tough. There was the drinking and the fighting, and that between the parents, and and I wouldn't call it. It wasn't functional. That's it was pretty. Yeah, it was bad. It wasn't the best way to grow up.
Do you think that's what made you tough also, like growing up around that? And then also like, in your area, did that kind of harden you up to become a fighter yourself?
I think so. There's different things that inspire fighters. A lot of it is hunger. A lot of the times, what are you hungry for? Though, what is it that really drives you? That you're trying to accomplish? Is it to feed yourself, to get a home? Is it that kind of hunger that there's no money? With me, I think it was recognition. I had always, there's that low self-esteem thing, and that I didn't seem to be good at anything. School, I sure wasn't good at. It wasn't so much that I couldn't have been good at. I just was disinterested, and so I was in, I didn't do good in school. I didn't get good grades. Baseball, well, my dad never threw me a ball in my life. Go outside and play some catch or go to a baseball game. We didn't grow up like that, and so I wasn't good at that. And I was too small for football, and I sought recognition. I needed recognition. I needed something to be good at.
Were both your parents from Mexico? Were they both Mexican Americans? How did that go?
Actually, my father's Mexican, but he's like second or third generation there. They were here back when it was Mexico. I don't know where the family originally came from, but my dad's Mexican and grew up in West LA. And his parents came from Sun Valley, I think. And my mother is actually not Mexican. She's half Irish and half Indian, American Indian, Pima Indian from Arizona. I never considered it. I never, they asked me what I was. I was a Mexican. My last name is Duarte, and it was always Mexican American, Chicano, they're my dad's friends, Pachuco friends back in the old days. And, that's the kind of company that would come to the house. And that's what I thought. I was just considered myself a Mexican, even though I couldn't speak Spanish. And I didn't learn Spanish because my dad or mother didn't speak Spanish because she's not Mexican. But she was actually grew up in the Chicano territory too, which was Temple Street area, which was a pretty tough neighborhood back in those days. But so I never learned that. But that's where I thought I was. I just considered myself Mexican.
But what was it like the first time you walked into a boxing gym? Was it an instant attraction to that lifestyle? What was it like the first time you went into a gym?
Well, of course, there was the one where I went to before I started boxing, which was Hoover Street. But then when I went to the team, my father showed me how to get to the gym by bus. I lived way over here on the west, and I had to go to downtown LA, walk through Skid Row, down 7th Street to Stanford Street, turn right, and there's a Teamsters Boys Club. And we moved in the car while my dad went in there to find out, what's going on. And he got in an argument right away with the guy at the door, and the guy told my dad, bring him in there. We got somebody who will whip me or something. My dad got mad and told the guy, my dad or my son will whip anybody in this gym. I said, oh, God, would you tell him that? So I go in there, so he comes and gets me. I go in the gym, and wow, a boxing ring, punching bag. You hear the sounds of the gym, the pitter patter, the speed bag, the arsenic pitter pat, the rat a tat. I mean, fits better. And they didn't have a bell in the gym. The guy would just say time, But the grunting and groaning and the skip rope, all those, as I'm looking at I was just fascinated and couldn't wait to get started. And Louis Harigi was the trainer. He was training the junior Golden Gloves fighters. He had a few pros too, but he had been running the gym for years, and so he gave me a little lesson and threw me in the ring. And boxing was different in those days. Things were a little tougher, they threw you in the ring the first day.
What was your first experience like going into a boxing or into the ring for the first time?
I started with a more experienced kid. Tony Garcia was his name. He was more experienced, and so he worked with me. He didn't go out to kill me, but I split his lip. There was no big deal in that. I split a lot of kids' lip back in those days, but that was on the street. But I split his lip, and I didn't think nothing of it. But Louis Hodeggy was, I heard him say, he's a natural. And then I'm sparring, a little more. Then a little later on, he says it again, but this time he emphasizes. He goes, "Yeah, man, he's a natural man." And from there on, every day after school, I'd jump on the bus, go to downtown LA. You had to really want it to jump on a bus for an hour, walk through Skid Row, train, then backtrack every single day. But I really wanted this. And
Absolutely, and all that determination and all that, that will to have, like you said, you even had to jump on the bus. Nowadays a lot of people don't do that. You had to jump on the bus. You had to probably discipline your body and eat right and the whole thing. Did a lot of that discipline, did it get in the way of your childhood? Like, was there times where you were just cracking down because it was becoming too much and stuff like that? Because you're a young man at this time, and I'm sure you were a teenager just wanting to go and hang out with your friends, but you had to do this to be disciplined to be a boxer. Was it pretty hard for you?
no, not at first, because I loved it so much. I just looked forward to it. I couldn't wait to get to the gym. Then after the gym was done, I hung out until it closed. I didn't want to go home. I loved being there. The atmosphere, the fighters, the typical conversation that goes on in the gym. When's your next fight? How much are you weighing? Stuff like that. And I just loved it, especially talking to some of the older amateurs or professionals. After the workout, we'd talk, drink coffee. But what happened was my trainer, he got me through my first few amateur, junior golden gloves fights. Not really junior golden gloves, kid fights. There wasn't a tournament. They'd have these fights at night at gyms, the same way they do today. There was a big difference, of course, in the way the fight. Oh, I'll get into that later. I'm going to search it. But what happened was Armando Muniz came out of the Army, and he was a bronze medalist in the Olympics. And so Louis started training him, preparing him. And Louis I'd go to the gym, and he wasn't paying attention to his kids as much as he was before. And I'd go to the gym, and he wouldn't be there. Or he'd be there training some of the pros and say, he'll train me tomorrow. But tomorrow never came. Little by little, I started becoming disinterested. The other kids weren't showing up either because Louis wasn't training them anymore. He wasn't giving them the attention he was. So things kind of got a little stale. I wasn't fighting anymore. He wasn't taking us to the fights. So I started going back to the neighborhood again. Started getting loaded again. Then before you know it, I'm 18 years old. I could turn pro. I had an amateur fight here and there. Won the Golden Gloves, the Diamond Bell tournament. Won a few tournaments, but regional, not national. And at some point, it was time to turn pro. And by this time, the people who Louis was associated with was managing me when you didn't want to touch me because they heard I was growing up, so they didn't want to manage me. So John Caprera, who wasn't the manager, our trainer, took me up and said, "Come on, you got to turn your pro. Time's wasting." Da da da. And, okay, I go along with him, and it wasn't a good thing. As much as I loved John, he was a real. I don't want to say fatherly, but an older person who was paid attention to me and wanted to see me. He really didn't know boxing though. He knew it as a fan. He kind of dabbled with it. And here's a guy, me, I had all this potential. And, I should have went with someone like Jackie McCoy or, one of the big trainers. But I ended up going with him. But it was during that time that I ended up back in the neighborhood and school started messing up again.
Let's say in the dressing room before you walked out for your pro debut there at the Olympic Auditorium, what was it like that first, when you were up next, to go through the drapes that one night? What were you feeling?
It's pretty much like always, even in the future, there's the nerves, there's not knowing what's next because you never went quite through it. You go downstairs into that little dressing room's down below kind of in the basement in a sense. Not, I don't know if you'd call it a basement, but and there would be, several fighters in one room. I was on standby. That's another thing about not having a manager that was already established. I had to be on standby. I was on standby for a good 6 or 7 weeks before I ever got to go on, and you get $25 for being on standby. The first time I remember going and so you're on standby, there's a knockout, they'll throw on the first standby. I wasn't even the first standby, they throw someone else on. And because they didn't know nothing about me, and they didn't even know who my manager was. And so the first time it was kind of relief. Oh well, I get $25 and I'm not going to fight, okay. But then I started getting really mad and going, there'd be no fight. Then finally I was ready to go on. They were going to call me up. Mondo Ramos had just got stopped by Duty Benega, who should never be Mondo Ramos, but Mondo Ramos by then was way over the hill. They started throwing things in the ring, so I couldn't go on. So that was the last time I was on standby. Finally, I got to go on. It was off of TV. Had already gone off the air. The Olympic had practically emptied. Just a few people were at ringside. But I go up there. I fought the guy who had been on standby with me for the past 7 weeks. He waited patiently just to get knocked out in about 40 seconds of the first round. From there on, I never had to be on standby again. Don Chardon seen that I had something, I had a good punch, and some potential, and so I never had to be on standby after that. But let me tell you, the excitement of fighting at the Olympic Auditorium, it was just so different from today. I couldn't relate to fighting today. Back then, you're in the dressing room, and you're nervous, of course, and finally you hear it. The guy's name was also named Ramos, Tony Ramos, I think it was. Ramos, Duarte, you're on. Oh man, there's a you let out a big woo, and okay, here it goes. And you walk up that little aisle, you go up the little stairs, then you can see the ring from up top, where you come down the aisle towards the ring. And you do your little strut down the ring. There's no music. There's me and my trainer, not me and 8 other guys following you, and you make it down to the ring, and it was all business, and you get introduced, simple introduction, Jimmy Lennon Sr. and Jr. both, but I was Jimmy Lennon Sr. who had introduced me the first time, and it was just a thrill. That spot that I had been watching on TV for years before, I'm in it. I'm in the movie, it's like, and Jimmy Lennon, is this really, Jimmy Lennon's introducing me? And it was really such a thrill.
And nobody knows that moment or what it feels like unless you're in it, like you guys were, back then, and in an arena like that. What was the atmosphere like as far as the people and the fans, how they received the fighters? What was it like knowing that you're going to be there in front of a hostile, most likely most Latino fans? What was that atmosphere like?
That atmosphere was, there wasn't a lot of people because it had gone on off TV. The main event was over, but once that bell rings, you don't notice none of that. The focus is just so deep. There's just you and that opponent. But I think about a moment ago, as I say, that the probably maybe one of the most challenging parts of it all is getting from the dressing room down to the ring. Not even that. Getting from the room in the dressing room out into the hallway before you even enter the arena itself is probably the most nervous part. Here it is. Then you get to that once the fans see you, which there wasn't very many that first fight. That's when the show begins. The nerves kind of go away, and you trot down to the ring. It's almost like a semi-act as you trot down to the ring with your style. And then once you're in the ring, I hear it's funny. It's different with different fighters. I hear some fighters say, once that first punch is landed, the nerves go away. It took me a few rounds to unwind. And they asked me, when you stop getting nervous? And I said, never, ever. I said, if ever they go away, it's time to quit boxing. It means you don't care no more. That's, basically the feeling through the first fight I ever had all the way to my last fight.
You had several quick knockouts, first round, second round, third round knockouts in your first, let's say, dozen fights. Is that what you were kind of tagged with? Is to have power and to be that a power or heavy-handed, hitter like you? Was that like your major strength?
Yeah, it's funny that what happens, and a lot of what you're asking me is questions that I use as examples when I'm teaching boxers today. Or when they ask me a question, I use certain examples. One of them is how to try to be relaxed. I say that it was my first fight that I was knocking guys out early. I said at some point in my early fights, I said, I want to make this an early night. I want to see if I can get this out in one round. So I go out there and I'm trying to knock this guy out, and man, I'm hitting him with everything I have, and it doesn't even seem to be buckling his knees. It's not even dazing him. And it's not coming. Geez, it's the third round now, and I've hit this guy, and it doesn't seem to be hurting him. So I said, no, I don't know, man. I better start boxing because I don't think I'm going to be able to knock this guy out. I got to outpoint him. So I start boxing. The minute I forget about knocking the guy out and start boxing, boom, down he goes. And so I stress that to fighters who are coming up, even fighters who are punchers, don't look for the knockout. The knockout will just come. Go out there, box, and when the timing's right. And that's all a part of learning how to relax.
Absolutely, and be patient.
There's a nervousness, and you could be nervous, but you have to learn how to direct that nervousness somewhere else, such as clenching my jaw, maybe. I don't want to clench my fist. That's too much, because that tends to make your arms tense too. So just bite down on that mouthpiece and focus on keeping your body relaxed. And those were my early fights. And sometimes I think you got to go back to those basics. Like in your future fights when you think you know it all after you've had 30, 40 fights. And sometimes it's good to go back and remember some of that stuff that you did when you were coming up. Because
yeah, you see a lot of the big-time fighters on the big-time networks now, they lose those fundamentals, and, they kind of got to revert sometimes back to those.
One of the biggest fundamentals I've seen that was so typical in the old days is footwork. Footwork has really gotten bad, and they don't understand the bounce. When I say bounce, I'm not talking about jumping up and down. I'm talking about, if you look at, I was watching one of Jerry Quarry just the other day when he was coming up. And now this is a heavyweight, and he's got this constant little spring in his legs, this little bounce. And again, I'm not talking about jumping over or leaping here, leaping there. It's a very subtle little bounce. It keeps your body in motion, and it all pertains to the why they call boxing the sweet science, the laws of motion. So today I hear a lot of walk them down. It's a term I don't particularly care for because fighters are literally walking. I even see them go heel toe, which is a way, where you should go directly to their toe. A lot of trainers and boxers and even box fans are out there raising their elbows as they would hear this. It's not until I show you what I'm talking about. I could get film and say, see this fight, see Joe Frazier. See, I'm not talking punchers. Obviously, the boxers are really to it, but I'm talking punchers. See the little element of that little bounce, that little spring in the legs. This is what keeps you ready and set to make your next move. This is what allows you to throw rapid fire combinations, not the bing, bing, bing combinations, but the bing, 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 bing. Punches coming right after there where you're turning your whole body into the punch. I see that fighters ain't doing that as nearly as much as they used to. I remember going to gyms where they emphasized that. They told, come on, move those legs. Now it's gotten to where I see a boxer come to the gym, not even a boxer, someone who's just learning to box, just a beginner, and he's maybe been a street fighter before. Instinctively, he starts doing the still bounce, and the trainer says, "Stop! Come on, stop bouncing around! Stop bouncing around! You're wasting your energy." And it's a natural instinct. If I explained that, gave a boxing lesson and explained what it does, how it actually adds power to your punch. And I see these guys walking around today. I say, oh, bad. Even good fighters, I'll see some of my favorites, and I say, if he would just do this little bounce, that's going to allow him to make this particular shift, which in turn gives you a different angle you could shoot from, and yeah, I could go on and on and on about.
You fight several fights, and you win most of them by knockouts, and then you get your first loss in December of 1974. You lost over in Sacramento Memorial Auditorium there at the historical site there by a split decision. Then about 3 or 4 months later, you're back in the ring. Today, a lot of fighters, once they lose, they go and hide for about a year and a half, and then they slowly start coming back in. Why was it important to you to get right back in the ring after your first loss?
That's just what it was. Well, first thing, let me tell you one thing, though, about that first loss. First thing today, what fighters do when they have their first loss is get a new trainer.
They blame their trainer, not themselves.
Fighters don't own up to their own losses no more. They blame it on the trainer. We were more loyal. We stayed with them. I had 3 losses, and before I left my trainer, but that was for other reasons. I wasn't blaming him for. But back then, we just fought. We fought all the time. I'd fight when I was a 4, 5, and 6 round fighter. I'd fight every 2 weeks if possible. I fought main events. I fought 2 times in 1 week before. I knocked out a guy this is a funny story. I knocked a guy out at the auditorium. I believe it was when I was a 10-round main event fight. I got to look back in the book and check it as well. But I knocked a guy out in 5 rounds at the Olympic Auditorium. It's Thursday night. What do? You go home, you party, drink with your friends, and next day's Friday, so of course the same thing. Saturday, same thing. Party all weekend. Sunday, recuperate. Monday, I went to the Olympic Auditorium to watch him film a movie. I don't remember what movie it was, but I was sitting there, and when I spotted my manager, and he does a little sign with his finger, "Come here." We went upstairs to Don Chagas' office. Said, "We have a fight. I have to go fight that night. Not tomorrow night, but that night. There's a fight in Sacramento." And I said, "I can't fight. I've been partying all weekend." And they assured me that I wouldn't have a problem with this guy. So there I was on the plane on the way to Sacramento, and I knocked some guy out in 1 round and came back. But that wasn't it. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. 4 days later, I'm fighting. That's just the way it was. Sparring the same way. We sparred all the time. Today it seems to be the thing is Monday, Wednesday, and Friday is sparring days. That's it. New findings, find that whatever, science gets in there and that it's best to train, the body recuperates in this amount of time, and the whole thing. So they got scientific about it. So now they train Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So your sparring partner doesn't show up Monday, tough luck. You got to wait till Wednesday before you get a chance to spar again. It's, especially for beginners, spar. If you're going to be a fighter, if you really want to be a real fighter, spar as much as you can, because no matter what you learn on the mitts or the punching bag or from your trainer, it's useless if you don't spar and make it become second nature. It doesn't become second nature by sparring, 2 times a week. You got to spar. It's just got to be something that becomes completely instinctive. And you don't build those instincts by punching the heavy bag or hitting the mitts. You got to get that from sparring, and I just see there's not enough of it nowadays. Another one is amateur boxing is not preparing our fighters for the pros. The referees are putting on a bigger show than the fighter themselves. Every grazing punch, whether it hurt the guy or not, they stop and give them a standing 8 count. It's not preparing them for the pros. You go, they turn professional to get hit with a good shot. Hey, where's my standing 8 count? You know.
And the following month, in April, you fight Tarcisio Gomez, who you talked about a little bit ago, and you won a split decision there. And you said the place went crazy. What was it like that night? What happened?
Well, I fought Famosito twice. The first time when the Riot won, I remember it was a hard fight, because of his style, he didn't hit hard, but he knew how to make himself a little awkward, get in these funny positions, and he would not hard shots, and a lot of fans, there for Castillo. And I remember that fight after it was over, getting the decision and the fans booing, and some were cheering mine, but I got hit in the head with a bottle. Someone threw a bottle from up in the rafters, and so I win the fight. And I don't feel happy that it was such a outburst from the audience. The second fight, I really wanted to beat him good. I mean, my girlfriend at the time I had back then was getting a lot of smart talk from her friends in school, telling her that Famosito got robbed in the first fight, and so this fight, I really wanted to beat him good. And I told my trainer, my manager at the time, John Cabrera, I told him, look, before the fight started, remind me of what all her friends are saying to her, my girlfriend, tell me right before the fight, remind me of it, so I could, to motivate me, And as a experienced fighter, I would say that was the worst thing to do. Don't let anger control the fight, right? So I'm out there, and I was exhausted by the 8th round. I had nothing left. And I think I was winning the fight to that point, for sure. But I remember wanting to knock this guy out. I was so mad that I was getting so much bad talk from, it was mostly the Mexican fans, not the Mexican-American fans, the Mexican nationals that I'm real careful saying this. I don't want to ruffle any feathers on anybody, get anybody mad. I was really, really pissed off and fighting pissed, angry, wanting to knock this guy, make it decisive. Well, I was missing a lot of shots because of it. My punches weren't landing as hard because I'm tensing up too much. I'm exhausted after the 8th round. I go the distance. I lose a decision. I think it was a unanimous decision. And, it was painful, as any other fight, But I think, as I recall, I just went back home, drank as, got partied as usual. And it was just a bad experience all in all. But I learned a lot from that fight. I remember thinking how, looking back on it and saying, well, maybe I shouldn't have gotten reminded about people giving my girlfriend a hard time. I should have focused more on the fight. I should have focused more on boxing. But it wasn't a lot different from any other loss. So.
And what was it like fighting a guy like Alberto Davila in 1977, in June 1977? What was it like fighting a great fighter like that, especially a well-known fighter there in the L.A. area like you were?
I remember when we were amateurs, he was the outstanding amateur boxer. And there was a time, we were going to fight. And my trainer, great Luis Haragui back when I was an amateur, great trainer, but he was really bad at psychological warfare. He tells me, maybe if you're not fighting, he might stop you. And I go, don't tell a fighter that, I think that might have been something that kept in my head for years. But it was years later, finally, we do fight in the pros. Now, here's what led up to that fight, is that he turned pro before me. Now Albert's undefeated, and I'm undefeated. And in those days, they used to announce the fighter before the fight. And I mean, like a week before the fight, you get in the ring and before the main event, and they'd introduce you, next week. But there'd be like 10 fighters up there, and they'd introduce, Jimmy Leonard would introduce you. We have, from basically an upcoming fighter, blah, blah, and you come in your way. But they do that to me and Albert, and I was starting getting the bigger ovation because I was a knockout puncher. And then came the awards for the Outstanding Prospect of the Year. And me, Albert Davila, Bobby Hernandez, there was a few fighters who were up for that. Well, I win it, Outstanding Prospect of the Year. And I think Albert probably, I think there was a bitterness already starting in him at that point. So he fights, he's undefeated. He fights Cecil Escobedo, and Escobedo beat him a decisive decision. I don't know, who knows, they might have even called it a split decision as we call it, Escobedo had him down, I think it was in the 8th round. Escobedo, beat him pretty good, gave him his first loss. So there went that good build-up of the two undefeated fighters fighting each other because he had lost. So in Escobedo's next fight, they sent me to Hawaii to fight him. So in the newspapers out in Hawaii, they're saying Escobedo has another unbeaten to beat. Escobedo should knock Duarte out in 4 rounds, blah, 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 blah. Well, I knocked Escobedo out in 2 rounds. See no problem at all with him. But I'm partying, I'm getting loaded again, and, it was around that time where I really went off the deep end again. It was 14, 15 fights or so, somewhere around there where I started partying again. So a lot went by before we ever got to meet finally. By then I had 2 losses, one to Guevara and one to Famosito Gomez. So we're going to fight. And I'm at my worst in drinking and doing drugs. By then I was doing heroin, cocaine, and I was fighting super bantamweight at that time because I convinced myself, like a lot of fighters who go up in weight, you say they can't make the weight, when really I think it's laziness that makes them want to go up in weight, and it was surely for me. And I'm fighting super bad, and I told my manager, we make this fight, I said, whatever you do, make it for 122. And I couldn't, but when I was fighting me on 118, I convinced myself I couldn't make the weight. I didn't know how to make it. I didn't have a trainer for the most part of my career at that time. The only guy I had was Louis, who had taught me the first year of my boxing and the junior golden gloves. After that, I was kind of on my own. I didn't know how to do things. I didn't know how to make weight. So I remember going to the weigh-in. I mean, I am sapped. I hadn't eaten. I was dehydrated. I had taken a diuretic the night before to dehydrate, and I knew absolutely nothing about potassium, carbohydrates, nutrition. It wasn't talked about much in those days, And so I get on the scale. I weigh 118, and dollar gets on, and I remember just being so weak and going in the ring. You don't think about that. Now you're focused on the fight. So I go out there boxing the way I usually do, but even people that I know remember seeing me from the audience saying, "Boy, Frank don't look good," physically. So Davila hit me with this little left hook. It wasn't that I had fought big punchers, good hard hitters, and they didn't even buckle my knees, And not getting with Davila, who isn't a knockout puncher, especially then. He wasn't knocking anybody out, nobody even down. And he hits me with this little baby left hook in the 3rd round, and my knees go away. I go down. I get up. God, and I'm thinking, geez, I had never been dropped before in the amateurs or pros. And I said, I can't say that no more. I went down, okay. But I'm clear-headed. So the 4th round was, I don't really remember what happened there. Nothing really to remember. The 5th round comes out, and boom, he hits me with that. I don't remember what he hit me with, but I go down again. I get up, and I'm clear-headed. My legs are just giving way. He knocks me down for the 3rd time in the fight, which was 2 times in 5th round. I go down, I get up, the referee stops it. And I remember looking at John, and I asked him, he comes in the ring. Why did you stop the fight? I wasn't hurt. I was completely clear-headed. My legs just wouldn't hold me up. And it was the most humiliating experience I ever had. Not by Davila, not by my rival, the guy who I won outstanding prospect over, the guy who knocked out the guy who gave him his first loss. I knocked him out in 2 rounds. I'm expected to knock Davila out, and Davila, if he beats me, is expected to win by decision. And it was horrible. I mean, it was way worse than my first 2 losses, which this was personal. I remember I didn't show my face again at the Olympic Auditorium for like a year. I used to go like every week to watch the fights. It was a weekly show. I was always there. And this time I was so ashamed to go back. I got stopped by a guy who's not a puncher. And it's funny, and I'm pretty positive about this. This gave Davila a confidence in his punch. He, after that, he stops Martinez. He stops him like in a few rounds, and he started scoring more knockouts after that. But I think he gained the confidence after that on his punch and started putting more behind it. And now in my fights, Davila has been the one that has, to this day, plagued me. He's the guy who I say the guy I don't like talking about. Here I'm rambling on and on about it, but when people come over to and talk about the fight, they want to really talk about is the second fight with Davila. They want to talk about that, and that's the fight I don't want to talk about either. I mean, I'm going to talk about it, but when friends come over and get together, that's the fight that everyone seems to want to talk about.
And you go on and you fight a few more fights in 78, 79, and one in 1980. You fight one more time in 1981, and then you don't fight for like 3 years or more than 3 years. What happened there, with all that time spent? You seem to be very consistent and active, from when you started to about, the late 70s. But, what happened thereafter?
Well, let me tell you, it was that time I finally got a new trainer after when I lost my third fight and I lost to Davila. I got a new trainer, and Harry Shapiro, and a manager, and I started training at the Main Street Gym, and I was taught some really good stuff. My trainer really had high hopes on with me. I had won the state title. I was looking really good, but I just couldn't seem to stop drinking and doing drugs. And then they put me with Rolando Navarrete. I didn't know who Rolando Navarrete was, but he was a junior lightweight. Now, this wasn't good management, putting me with a junior lightweight.
And that was in Hawaii.
Hawaii. It was supposed to be at featherweight, but, he came in at 127, and 128, something like that. And, man, oh, God. That was a beating. That was a real Rocky Balboa versus Clubber Lang beating. I got the boxing pretty good for the first 3 rounds, and he hits me with a body shot. Oh, man, I was hurt. He got me on the ropes. From the whole fight, every round, the referee would come back to the corner and ask me, do you want me to stop the fight? And, of course, I said no. But in my mind, I was thinking, my trainer good, though. But no, let's stop the fight. This was a painful fight. But I fought. I kept coming forward. I never backed up. I kept coming forward, trying to. And it's funny, even to the 10-rounder. To the 10th round, I'm still trying to figure out how I could win. I lost every round after the third. And not just lost close, but took a beating, body beating, headshots. But I stay on my feet and I keep coming forward. And that last, I know there's seconds left in the round, but I'm still trying to figure out how to knock this guy out. I gotta win by knockout, and I'm still going for the knockout. And that's the mentality of what a fighter should be. I think you don't give up, you don't stop backing up and trying to say, well, I just want to go the distance. I still want to win, and that's what was going through my mind. I want to win. I want him to go back home a winner. I'm going to knock this guy. I know I got to knock him out to win. And I'm shooting for the knockout. But he's beating me up while I'm coming in. He's giving me a beating. The next day in the newspaper, the only good thing I have to say about the fight was that the next day in the newspaper it said, "This courage is spelled D-U-A-R-T-E." And that's the only good thing I got out of the fight was that little quote in the paper. So after that fight, I decided to retire from the ring, never to make a comeback again. I quit. I'm done with boxing. I can't seem to stop getting loaded. And that's what I did. I quit. So I went to welding. I started going to San Monica College to do welding, to learn how to weld. And I was on my way. I was going to go for my certificate and become a construction welder. Then something happened at the house. My mom said it was time for me to leave because things were missing, things that I considered I was borrowing, and I'd pay them back when I get the money, but I needed to get my drugs. And so I went to stay with my aunt, and I said, what am I going to do? I was so depressed. I remember getting on my hands and knees and praying to God that something, get me out of this mess I'm in with the drugs. I want to be, this isn't what I wanted my life to turn out to be. And so it hit me that I'd make a comeback to the ring. I would have maybe 2 or 3 fights, just enough money to buy a car and put a payment where I could live in an apartment and get a 9-to-5 job. That's it. That's what I'm going to do. So my cousin Albert Galletta, he passed away about a year ago. He introduced me to the Goosens. Now the Goosens were just starting out in boxing. They had maybe been training fighters for about 2 years at that time. So I go there and they took me in, and that's when my comeback started.
When you were doing that to yourself and hurting yourself in that way, was it just that you were addicted to this stuff, or were you doing it because maybe there was something missing in your life that was hurting you, and maybe you were doing this to kind of get away from that, or was there someone missing in your life? What do you think it was? Was it just pure addiction that made you give up this career as a boxer and get to this low in your life?
No, I would say it was just lack of self-worth for whatever reason, low self-esteem. You get into the psychological end of it, and lack of confidence. I didn't fit in anywhere unless I was loaded. I just didn't feel the self-worth. I didn't feel anybody wanted me around. I feel with the guys I got loaded with. Anybody with a decent background, whether it be, good jobs or a nice home or a regular family, regular people. I just didn't fit in. I just didn't feel worthy to be around. The only place I fit in was with hypes and alcoholics.
What were you like personality-wise when you were sober?
When I was sober, shy. I always was a nice person. I never really a troublemaker type or one who would be ready to fight at the drop of a hat if someone had said something I didn't like. I wasn't like that. I could take a little joke. I wasn't thin-skinned where I was offended easily. Even when I got drunk, except for when I was way younger, I kind of was a little bit of a troublemaker when I got drunk. But when I was in my later 20s, I was an easy guy to hang out with. I didn't run around acting like a tough guy or nothing like that.
I remember reading an article on you or about you in the LA Times, I guess from several years ago. You were telling the story of when you had OD'd one time and you were with a bunch of people and they pretty much had to revive you through burning your feet or something like that and, throwing water at you or whatever it might have been. Do you remember that experience? How did that change your life?
Oh, boy. Well, yeah, it's painful when you wake up the next day knowing you came real close to dying. I was out one night with the connection. We're partying and drinking, and we were taking a couple downers. I forgot what they were, Valiums or something. But I you don't mix pills and heroin. It's not a good idea. And I remember calling this other connection. The guy saying I was called the connection while he was dealing at that particular time. But so we called up a friend of mine who was the connection, and I remember telling him, "Hey, I'm going to pick up, make me a good one. I want him to make me a good, amount. Give me a good amount for mine. You put them in balloons and roll them out. And, so make me a good one." So that he did. So we go to his house and to score, and he let us use his restroom to go slam, and went in there. The guys did theirs, and I did mine last. I remember sticking the needle in my arm. That's all I remember, sticking the needle in my arm. Then I went to turn on the water to wipe some blood off my arm, and that's the last thing I remember. The next thing I remember was waking up in a bathtub at a different house, and the burning of the feet. Everyone, even dope, said, "What's that about?" You don't burn nobody's feet, But that's how bad the overdose was. The mouth to mouth wasn't doing it. The throwing the ice down your, in your blood, throwing somewhere where it's supposed to be. Right? They throw it in the shower. Different things like that they'll do. But you don't burn the feet. But I guess they were so desperate to bring me back that they did that. And usually when you come out of an overdose, you come out, you continue enjoying your high. That didn't happen with me, though. I woke up in a bathtub. That was really dangerous because you don't be thrown out for an overdose and just leave them in a bathtub because, I could stop breathing again if it was that bad. But so I didn't. So here I am, But it's a really scary.
Did that change your life? Did you learn from that experience, or did you continue?
No. Yeah, I learned from it. I learned not to have the connection to make me a real good one.
And this was before your comeback fight in 1984, right?
My comeback, that's before my comeback fight.
And when you did do that comeback fight, you were with the Goosens, and what happened then?
I had intended just to have those 2 or 3 fights, just get enough money to make, buy a car, get an apartment to live in, and to that's what I was looking for. I had no intention of making a big comeback. But I went in the gym, and Joe, he wasn't a real experienced trainer at the time, but he was what I needed. He was a motivator. He was really good at psyching me up and made me realize that, hey, I could make this into something bigger than just 1 or 2 fights, And I remember going in the gym and working the pads with him. And I didn't show up the next day because I got so sick. I got a flu. It tends to happen when your body's weak and you work out hard. Well, I got sick, but I ended up, of course, going back. I called him, explained it to him. Didn't want him to think that I was going back to my old ways. Then after about maybe 2 weeks of training and running, I sparred for the first time in years. And I sparred against this flyweight named, who's not much, smaller than the bantamweight, which I am, who was North American champion Alonzo Strongbow. And I remember going in the ring, like you get on a bike, 10 years later you get on it, just, it's like getting on a bike. Now with boxing, it felt so foreign to me. I said, I couldn't believe it. It's so weird. But it comes back real fast. So, and before you know it, I was, beating up Alonzo, and he couldn't understand why, I was getting better again.
You started having a pretty good success after that in your comeback, and even in 1986, you fought a guy named Jesus Salud, who was a Filipino that fought out of Hawaii, and you were actually the first to beat him. He was an undefeated guy. He was like 20-0 at the time you beat him. Do you remember anything about that fight? You knocked him out in the 9th round.
Yeah, this was a fight of the veteran versus the young upcoming kid, undefeated upcoming kid. This was really one of the biggest highlights on my comeback because, the fights up to then was trying to get to that spot where I could get into some decent money and get some real recognition. Because even though I'd been having these fights, only, friends and real avid boxing fans knew I was fighting again. But here I was on TV. This was going to be the 3rd fight of the tournament that they were having at the farm, the Stroh's tournament. And I had gained a bit of popularity because from that Stroh's tournament, because I had beaten this pretty good fighter from Arizona, Mike Moreno. That was in the first of the tournament. Then after that, I beat George Garcia, who was a good fighter. And now, I'm going to fight Jesus Salud, undefeated, probably favorite to win the tournament. And my training for that fight was just everything just went perfect. And I felt confident, real confident, and but not over. And it was the most rewarding fight to that. Probably at that time, the most rewarding fight in my career I had ever had. So I beat him. I stopped him in 9 rounds. His eyes swelled up real bad. They stopped there because his eyes. But I was getting to him. I was down and buckling his knees. But he was a pretty good fighter. So after that fight, I became big news all of a sudden. But the thing I didn't like so much was the news wasn't just on my successful comeback. It was that I beat drugs, I beat alcohol, blah, 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 this and that. Every time they mentioned my name, they had to bring up the drug and alcohol part of it. And I was getting tired of that. I said, why can't they just tell me, hey, you're a good fighter, talk about the fight, talk about my having a successful comeback and what I did good in this particular fight. What did it feel like when you landed that right hand on his chin that knocked him out? The typical things but it was always the drug part of it, and it was kind of I was getting a little tired by that. It's a funny thing that people lately have been, it's kind of funny to me. It's funny people start calling me a legend. Yeah, he's a legend. Yeah, I hear that from newspapers or from internet sites, or and I'm not a legend. What do you mean that was? Sugar Ray Robinson's a legend. Joe Louis is a legend. Well, I was their legend. I'm not a legend, but I enjoy it. But then I stopped and think about it. Well, I said, where does that come from? Then I realized it is because coming back from alcoholism and drug addiction and making this successful comeback. So I said, okay, I guess I am a legend. I'll take that.
And after that Salud fight, your next fight over, you fought a guy named Jose Torres, which you were badly cut in the first round, but you went ahead and finished the fight, and you stopped him in the 9th round. You would figure after somebody, gets badly cut in the first round, how do you finish a fight and win at the end of the fight? How did that fight go?
The fight with Torres, I just won that tournament, and life was just great. I was Mr. GQ, doing a lot of radio interviews and TV interviews and, signing a lot of autographs and getting caught in the limelight. So now I get this tune-up fight. I get a title shot, but we're going to do this tune-up first. So with Torres, it's a funny thing about with me, not with everybody, not with all fighters. My easiest fights have the big-name fighters. My toughest fights are with these guys who are supposed to be tune-ups. The guys who are tune-ups, unfortunately, I'm physically in shape, but I'm not psyched. I'm not focused. Say it's a week before my fight with this Torres guy who I had this tune-up with, and I'm thinking, oh yeah, I'm supposed to put the carpet in today, and I want to make sure it gets in because the after-fight party we're going to have. And let me see, who am I going to invite? Oh yeah, okay. Oh yeah, I want to wear this for the fight night, and those are the thoughts that are going through my mind. So all of a sudden the bell rings, and I'm getting my mind off all that kind of stuff, getting it into the fight. Now, when you're fighting a fighter like Jesus Salud, for the final of the Stroh tournament, I'm thinking, I'm on the way to the gym. It's 2 weeks from the fight. I'm in good shape. On the way to the gym, anywhere I'm driving, my head's bobbing and weaving. My shoulders are shrugging, throwing imaginary punches. It's 2 weeks from the fight, and I'm focused. My mind is on the fight every minute of the day. I'm watching TV, but I'm not watching the movie that's on TV. I'm watching my fight, what I'm going to do, and that's focus. That's why the big fights tend to be not as tough as the ones with tune-ups. And with this Torres, he came on, and I wasn't real sharp. I was in shape, but I wasn't real sharp. he's a veteran. He knows how these guys know how to make themselves tough. Make themselves a little awkward. And I remember getting cut and panic. If I get stopped, there goes a title fight. A lot of situations they might have stopped that fight because it was pretty bad cut. They might have stopped the fight because of the fact that that title fight coming in. The doctor, okay, they'll be a little lenient on their decision. And I remember Jimmy Montoya, the trainer of Pugatores, coming into the ring after a fight, telling his fighter, yelling, politics, it's politics. He wanted to win the fight, them to stop the fight where his fighter would win by a technical knockout. Not the way I care to win fights by headbutts. And I'm sorry, it wasn't headbutt. It might have been, but I don't remember. But for whatever reason, you really don't want to stop getting win fights on cuts. You want to win clear. And I was winning the fight, hands down. I mean, he was giving me a hard time, but I was winning it hands down. But it was a scary moment, thinking that I was going to lose that crack at the title.
And your next fight up was, for the crack of the title, it was Bernardo Pinanga. You lose a 15-round unanimous decision for that bid. Was that a big setback in your mind to have lost, your chance at getting gold at that time?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, that was a fight that I was going to retire for. There was no reason to go on. I was 32, which, now this is weird because today that's not such an old man. Back then you were considered an old man at the time. And in my mind, it was, and it's time to retire. Okay, I got my crack. I made a statement. I did far more than what I intended to do on the comeback. After all, I was intending to make a comeback, have 2 fights or so, just enough to buy a used car and set myself up in an apartment, get a 9-to-5 job. And here I am, making good money, got popularity, signing autographs again, getting chant Frankie again. Wow, man, not in my wildest dreams would I have that when I had just started my comeback. So when I did have that fight, I said, you know what? I want to retire now. That's it. I did it. I got my crack at the title. I got in a 15-rounder. I gained respect. I got my self-esteem. I bought a house. Some really good things happened. It's time to retire. I'm happy with it. The one thing I was looking forward to, though, before I said all that, was a rematch with Bernardo Panengo for the title. That wasn't going to happen. So then that's where those thoughts came in about retiring. I'm finished. I'm satisfied. The reason I didn't get a comeback with Bernardo Panengo is because, now get this. This is wild and crazy. He retired after he fought me. After that fight, he retired, and we asked for a rematch down in the dressing room to his manager, and he said, "Oh yeah, sure, yeah, we'll give it a rematch." He translated it to Panengo in Spanish. I was, his comeback, Bernardo's eyebrows went up and he nodded. It's like, I don't know about that. If I want to do a rematch. Well, he retired. He made a comeback about a year later, but went up to super bantamweight and won the super bantamweight title. But he didn't give me a rematch. Of course, then after that came Davila and a few other fights, which really, after Bernardo Panengo, my heart wasn't in it no more. I said, because, like I said, I wanted to retire. I made a comeback and fought Davila, not because I wanted to try to get revenge for that first loss, but because Dan Goosen told me, like $55,000, which was big money back then. Money was a motivating factor, and that's not a good thing. I don't think, not for me. It's got to be because I want to win fights.
You fight Davila in the rematch. You beat him, stop him in the 10th round. You go up and fight 3 other guys after that, and then for that last fight that you had, your last fight of your career, you fight a great Mexican fighter. What do you remember about fighting a great fighter like the Mouse, Daniel Zaragoza?
The fight with Zaragoza, I went up in weight. Went to super bantamweight or junior lightweight, whichever. And it just wasn't why I had left 10 Goose, the Goose, and we had a falling out, but it was my fault. I should have never left. I don't know. I just got mixed up in the head and said things I shouldn't have. So it wasn't the same. Training wasn't the same. My heart wasn't the same in it. I mean, it was about conditioning. I trained, I ran, but I remember in the dressing room actually start feeling content. And that's not the way you're supposed to feel before a fight. I mean, I wasn't hungry. Ideally, I want my stomach to start growling, just a little bit hungry and just a little bit thirsty. You don't want to be dehydrated, but you don't want to be waterlogged either, which is a big mistake fighters are making today. They don't, the big word. Oh, that's another subject. That's a boxing lesson. Going in the ring, every punch I threw missed. Every punch that he threw landed. But I just couldn't land. I look at the film and my body looks a little pudgier than it should be. I looked really bad. I remember when they stopped the fight in the 10th round, please don't stop this fight. Don't stop the fight. And I didn't think they should have, but I remember that round where they stopped the fight, he didn't hurt me one. I was never dazed. I even went there kind of with my hands down a couple of times, which is stupid, but trying to prove a point that he can't hurt me. He wasn't hurting me, but he was hitting me at will, and I was missing every shot I threw. And I remember after the fight, they interviewed me and asked me what I was going to do from here. And I said, well, I guess I'm starting looking for a job, and that was the end of it. I came out in good health, and I'm happy with the way everything turned out. I hear a lot of fighters say they have no regrets. I talked with Ray Boom Boom Mancini, a dedicated fighter. He has no regrets about anything he did. He would do it the same way. And I could tell you 100%, I have regrets. Oh, gosh. I just think, why can't I turn back the hand of time and have done that right, been dedicated the way I was on my comeback when I had the real ability when I was in my younger years. My middle name could be Mistake. I made so many mistakes that you can't go back and change.
Actually, with your last statement there, you answered like the next three questions that I had. But last year I went to a screening of the documentary El Boxeo, and you were featured in it, and you talked on it, and you talked about what it was like to be, for you as a Mexican American, being in the ring. I think it was about the Gomez fight. I mean, you obviously got recognition from your peers or from people in boxing to have brought you, onto a film like that. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about, people do remember who you are and what you did in the ring? How grateful are you to people that do remember you?
It's great. When I had stopped fighting the first time when I retired after the Navarrete fight in '79, there was a time where I thought I could quit fighting and I'd always be remembered, but they forget like that. And I remember thinking, geez, Frank who? You remember Frank? No, I never heard of him. Well, when I made my comeback to the ring, and when I didn't decide to have to take this farther than I had originally planned, I remember saying to myself, don't forget, this popularity you have isn't going to last forever. They're going to forget. I said to myself, well, enjoy it now, so I sure did. Every autograph, I cherish those moments people ask me for my autograph or have their picture taken with them every time I was in the paper or getting a news interview. Enjoy it now because it's not going to last forever. So when I stopped fighting, I became a barber. I got some of that. Some fight people remember me, some didn't. Frank, cool, well, okay. But then when I started training, doing private lessons, I stopped barbering, started going to the gym doing private lessons. I was back in the environment of boxing. And at first, a lot of people didn't know me, but Freddie Roach did. And before you know it, the word got around who I was. And before you know it, people waiting, hi, Frank, how's it going? I started, wow, it felt really good, And then all of a sudden, Boxeo came on and they want to interview me. And people are interviewing me. I said, wow, man, I was wrong. I said, this time they do remember. And then I go on Facebook, and I got a lot of Facebook friends and people I don't know. I don't ask anybody for a Facebook request. I just don't. Not that I don't want to. I don't ask, but I get a lot, and people are referring to me as legend and great fighter, and all these. And I got to tell you, man, I'm just so grateful for it. That the punches I had taken, this scar tissue I got, this flat nose I got, I got something out of it. And really rewarding. I wouldn't trade it for anything. I would go back, and like I say, I have regrets. I have plenty of regrets. I think my biggest regret is the fact that today people say, "Hey, Frank, man, yeah, we were at that fight when you fought this fighter or you fought that fighter, and blah, blah, we did this and that after the fight, blah, blah." And I stop and think that these people came to celebrate. They wanted to see me fight. They wanted to see me win. They wanted to have the after-fight party. They wanted to say, "Yeah, I know Frank Duarte," and I didn't give it to them on my first part of my career. I didn't dedicate myself. If I could have seen the future, I would have loved to have been able to say, "Hey, I'm gonna give you something to celebrate tonight," and I didn't do that. I didn't realize that someday I'm gonna be a 60-year-old man, which will be September 3rd. September 3rd, I'll be 60, where people would still be coming up to me, talking kindly of me. And like I say, on Facebook, I see it on a lot of these little boxing groups, and sometimes in the new book that just came out by Gina Aguilera, Mexican American boxing in Los Angeles, where I'm featured in a few pages there. I didn't realize that this would be happening. I sometimes think, what if I would have dedicated myself? What could I take? I always had that question in my mind. What would have happened if I would have dedicated myself when I was younger?
You're going to be around for another 100 years, my friend. But how would you want to be remembered to what I call the three big F's? Your friends, your family, your fans. How would you want them to remember Frankie Duarte?
I want to be remembered as, in the fighting part of it, is a fighter who wouldn't quit, who wouldn't take a step backwards, who gave his all in the ring as a nice person. I'm approachable. I'm a nice person, and wouldn't do anybody any harm. I don't really have any expectations of anything extraordinary outside of that. I'm just another person, really.
Well, Frankie, earlier you said that, you probably didn't think of yourself as a legend like, some people were saying, but, everybody has their own definitions of what a legend is, what a great fighter is, what a good fighter is, what a decent fighter is. And I think by this of what I've seen, people ask you to come out on their films, or Gina Aguilera putting you on his book of, the Mexican Americans in Los Angeles. I mean, it tells me a lot, that people that do remember you. And you must have caused some kind of happiness in their lives, whether they've watched you in the ring or heard your story outside of the ring. You got their attention somehow, and, you'll forever be remembered by, those individuals that do remember you. My friend, thank you very much for coming onto theboxingbar.com, and I appreciate all your time you've taken, to do this, and I appreciate you and appreciate your accomplishments in the ring, most of all, and I thank you very much for all that.
Thank you. It was great. Thank you for having me on.